So today we learn how to write coordinates or how to see them, okay? So there are two axes that we have. We have the x-axis or the horizontal x-axis, and then we've got the vertical y-axis, okay? So there's a starting point which we call the origin, which is at 0x and 0y. We will always state our coordinates as x and y. Okay, we've got two directions: north, south, east, west. These are like the word for news. That's where it comes from these four directions. So another application of math. All right. So let's mark a coordinate, right? So let's mark a location on this diagram. So let's say if I'm over here. So we'll always go in the x direction first. So how many units am I moving? 3 units. And then how many units am I moving this way? 4 units. So this point would be 3, 4. Right? And then do we see a right angle over here? We see a right angle. So if I want the distance, we just learned Pythagoras' theorem. So we can easily find the distance related to it. Okay. So now let's say if I'm over here in this location. So go to x first, so -5, and then go vertically by 5, so +5. So this location would be -5 and 5. Okay. So a few things that you can find from a location. So let's say if this is my starting point, and this is my ending point, like what I was stating earlier. So this is 3, and this is 4. So using Pythagoras' theorem, we can find this length, right? So c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So a is 3, b is 4. So 3 squared plus 4 squared. So we get 9 plus 16. C squared is 25. C is the square root of 25, which is 5. So we get this first part, right? Then we can find the slope also. The slope is defined as the change in y divided by the change in x. Remember that this triangle is the Greek letter delta, which represents change. Okay, it's just a symbol. You could name it with any other symbol. This is just giving you an idea. So delta is change in y, right? So over here, what's the change in y? The change in y is b. And what's the change in x? A. So 4 divided by 3 would be the slope for this line. So two things that you can find from a set of 2 points, basically. And once you make the right angle triangle, you can easily find the slope, or you can find the distance. Okay? Then you can also find the midpoint, right? So there is a video associated with the midpoint. So if I wanted to find the middle point of this, so imagine if you broke this part into a half, where would you end up? At 1.5. And if you broke this part into a half, where would you end up? At 2. So that would be here. This is the midpoint. So the midpoint is basically the half of the x's and the half of the y's. So another thing you can find is the midpoint. So let's try to solve these in terms of x, okay? So just to give you an idea how to approach it. So let's say if we don't have a starting point. Like let's say we don't know the coordinates. We just know that there's an x and a y. So how would we write this? So let's say if this is x1 and this is x2, right? And this is y1, or let's call this x2 and y2, right? So now what's the change in x? What's the change in x? I'm asking for this value. What's this value? What is the difference between these two? It's x2 minus x1. And similarly, the y change, let's call it delta x and delta y. This would be the change or the difference in the two y coordinates, right? So if I wanted the slope, delta y divided by delta x. So what's delta y? Y2 minus y1. And what's delta x? X2 minus x1. Right? So that becomes a formula. Right? A way to determine the slope or determine a coordinate given a slope. Then if I were to do the midpoint, call that capital M. Right? So what did I say? The average of the x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates. Right? A little while ago we spoke about where is the half. So the half for this one would be right here, and the half for this one would be right here. Right? So what's the half of the y's and the half of the x's? So this becomes another expression. And then you've got the distance. So the distance c is actually, using Pythagoras' theorem, it's delta x squared plus delta y squared, right? So which, if you plug it in, you get x2 minus x1 whole squared plus y2 minus y1 whole squared. And that's c squared. So if I need c, the distance, I'll have to take the square root. So you get three formulae. If I were to write them over here, these are my three formulae. Midpoint, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 plus divided by 2. Slope, delta y divided by delta x, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, right? And then distance, delta x squared plus delta y squared, the square root, and then x2 minus x1 whole squared plus y2 minus y1 whole squared. If you can manipulate all these things, it would be wonderful. So let's try an IXL just to give you a quick review. This is G1 Algebra 1. Which point has coordinates 4 and negative 2? So let's find that point. So this is our x, this is our y. So let's start from 0 and go to 4 on our x. So we reached here. Now they're saying go to negative 2, so keep going but in the negative direction. So which point is it? R. So this exercise should be fairly easy. So in this one they are asking which one has negative 2 and 5. So x is negative 2. So let's start at 0, move in negative 2, so we are here. And then we want to move vertically by 5 units, so we reach here. So point E. So mark point E should be fairly easy for you to get. And let's hit submit. So I won't do too many of these. You guys can continue. Okay, let's try a different axle. Midpoint formula. So what is our midpoint formula? Midpoint formula is take the average of the x's, take the average of the y's. So this was the formula I stated. x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So these are our x's. So x1 plus x2 will be 3 plus 3 divided by 2. And our y's are here. 9 plus 3 divided by 2. So 3 plus 3 is 6. 9 plus 3 is 12. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 12 divided by 2 is 6. The midpoint is 3 and 6. Let's plug that in. Okay, let's try another one. Then you guys can take over. So, again, midpoint formula. Keep these formulae in hand because this is what will help you, okay? So, x's. Let's put those in. 7 plus 9. Remember, the first value is the x. The second value right here is the y value. So, put that here. So, 7 plus 9 is 16. 3 plus 3 is 6. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So, let's plug these in. 8, 3, enter. So try a few. Remember the location x, y. Okay, so x, y, x, y, x, y, x, y. Remember it that way. Then you'll probably be able to do all the ideas or all the midpoints as needed. Okay, let's try a third one. So this is midpoint formula, but you've got to find the endpoint. All right. So there is something that's given, the midpoint is given, and using that midpoint, you're trying to find out the other point. Okay, so let's recall our midpoint formula, and I'm sure we'll be able to manipulate this equation to solve. Okay, so what do we have? x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And y1 plus y2 divided by 2, right? So we have that. Okay. Now, that's our formula. So these are the x's. Sorry, this is the midpoint. So let's put that on this side, 6, 4. And we don't know the coordinates of Q, right? So we can call it anything, AB. Let's call it AB. Now they're saying that the midpoint of QR is M, which is 6, 4. So let's take these x values. What would the average be? 2 plus a divided by 2. And what would the average be for this? 8 plus b divided by 2. So now just compare the spots. Right? This might be a little logical, so it can be challenging for some people, but try. Do it slow, steady, but challenge yourself. Don't just give up, because when you give up is when you're saying that I don't want to do it, and then that creates a lot of challenges for the future skills you want to acquire in anything. So 6 and 2 plus a divided by 2. These are comparative at the same spot. So let's say 6 is equal to 2 plus a divided by 2, right? And then we'll solve that. And then we have 4 is equal to 8 plus b divided by 2. And then we'll solve that. So we can use SADMAP. And solve. So what do we see? We see a division. So the opposite is multiply. Let's multiply. This will cancel. So you'll get 2 plus a is equal to 12. Then we see an addition. So we'll subtract. So this will cancel. So a is 10. And then do the same thing with b. So once you get 1, you'll be able to get all of them. Okay? But try it. Don't give up, as I'm saying again. So times 2 times 2. Again, this cancels. This becomes 8. This becomes 8 plus b. Subtract 8 from both sides. This becomes 0. So our coordinates are 10 and 0. Let's plug those in. And show you're working. Don't just try to guess, okay? I know you're in a rush to go somewhere, but let's skip that rush and solve. Let's try another one. Okay, let's try this one. So they say the midpoint is 9 and 7. And one pair of coordinates is 8, 9, and let's call this AB. So if I were to take the average for this, the x's, I would get 8 plus a divided by 2. And then I do the y's, so I'm going to get 9 plus b divided by 2, and all of this is equal to 9 and 7. So let's compare and equate. So the 8 plus a divided by 2 is equal to 9. And then G4 is distance between 2 points. So what did we learn about the distance formula? So we said subtract the 2 x's and square, and then subtract the 2 y's and square. So let's put that up here. Distance is equal to x2 minus x1 squared, y2 minus y1 squared. And then the square root of the entire thing. So let's subtract the 2 x's. So 5 minus 8 and squared, and let's subtract the 2 y's, 4 and 0 squared, and square root. So what's 5 minus 8? Negative 3. The square of it is 9. Plus, what's 4 squared? 16. 9 plus 16 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5. Let's put that in here. 5. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so again, subtract the 2 x's and square. So 8 minus 2 squared, and subtract the 2 y's and square. So 8 minus 2 is 6, 6 squared. 2 minus 10 is negative 8. Use the positive value, so 8 squared. And the square root. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. When you add both, you get 100. The square root of 100 is 10. So try these. We'll see how we can solve these questions. Good luck. And